Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today we'll be exploring the lesser-known dimensions of General George S. Patton, moving beyond the Hollywood portrayal to discover the intellectual, strategic thinker behind the theatrical persona. Subscribe now to join our community and support this project. Now, let's begin. When most people think of General George Smith Patton Jr., they envision the flamboyant commander immortalized in film, pearl-handled revolvers, profanity-laden speeches, and an insatiable thirst for combat. This caricature, while partially self-created, obscures the remarkable intellectual who devoted his life to the scholarly pursuit of military excellence. Few realize that Patton maintained personal libraries at each of his residences, filled with thousands of carefully annotated volumes on military history. According to military historian Roger Nye, Patton's collection revealed a mind systematically absorbing the entire span of warfare from ancient Greece to modern times. His personal journals show that he read extensively in multiple languages, including French and German, often consuming several books weekly even during active campaigns. Patton's intellectual development was profoundly shaped by his struggle with what modern experts believe was dyslexia. As documented in family correspondence, young George experienced significant reading difficulties throughout his education at West Point, where he required extensive tutoring and developed elaborate coping mechanisms. Far from deterring him, these challenges forced Patton to develop extraordinary memory techniques and a distinct preference for experiential learning that would later define his command style. His literary output extended far beyond military reports. Throughout his life, Patton produced hundreds of poems, philosophical reflections, and analytical papers. His poem, Through a Glass, Darkly, reveals a contemplative side rarely associated with a general. Through the travail of the ages, midst the pomp and toil of war, have I fought and strove and perished countless times upon this star. These verses reflect his belief in reincarnation and his view of himself as part of an eternal warrior tradition, intellectual dimensions entirely absent from popular portrayals. Between world wars, Patton published 19 scholarly articles in professional military journals, offering detailed analyses of tactics and technology that demonstrated remarkable foresight. In a 1937 piece for the Cavalry Journal, he accurately predicted the vital role of air-ground coordination in future conflicts, writing, "The marriage of air and armored forces will revolutionize modern warfare, creating opportunities for decisive penetration unlike anything seen since Napoleon." This predictive strategic thinking fundamentally contradicts the image of Patton as merely an aggressive battlefield commander. Perhaps the most revealing aspect of Patton's intellectual approach to warfare was his creation of what colleagues referred to as his tactical laboratory at his property in Massachusetts. Here, far from the public eye, Patton constructed elaborate miniature battlefields and conducted meticulous war games to test tactical concepts developed through his historical research. According to personal correspondence with fellow officers, Patton spent countless hours manipulating these miniature armies, methodically documenting outcomes and refining his theories. Colonel Robert S. Allen recalled visiting Patton in 1938 and finding an entire room dedicated to a sand table recreation of the Battle of Cannae, where Hannibal defeated the Romans through double envelopment, a tactic Patton would later employ against German forces in France. This laboratory approach extended to technological innovation. When conventional military wisdom remained fixated on trench warfare after World War I, Patton independently studied automotive engineering to better understand the potential of mechanized forces. His personal papers include detailed technical drawings of tank modifications, some of which he financed from his own considerable family fortune for testing. These private experiments led to significant improvements in tank radio communication systems eventually adopted by the U.S. Army. Patton's Marshall Laboratory also included physical training innovations. Drawing from his Olympic experience and studies of ancient combat techniques, he developed a unique system of physical conditioning that combined traditional calisthenics with movements drawn from boxing, wrestling, and Eastern martial arts. According to his aide Major Charles Codman, Patton tested these regimens personally before implementing them in training programs that produced troops with exceptional stamina and fighting capability. This methodical, experimental approach belies the common portrayal of Patton as merely instinctual or impulsive on the battlefield. His tactical decisions, which often appeared spontaneous to observers, were in fact the culmination of years of systematic study, simulation, and analysis. As he wrote in his journal in 1942, "What seems to others as impetuosity is actually the fruit of decades of thought." Patton's participation in the 1912 Stockholm Olympics represents far more than a footnote in his military career. It was a formative experience that profoundly shaped his approach to leadership and combat. Competing in the modern pentathlon, which combined pistol shooting, fencing, swimming, riding, and cross-country running, Patton embraced a classical warrior ideal that would influence his military philosophy for decades to come. Though officially placing fifth, Patton's performance was remarkable. A scoring controversy in the shooting competition, where judges couldn't find one of his shots on the target, likely cost him a medal. Patton maintained he hit the same hole twice, a claim consistent with his exceptional marksmanship throughout his life. This experience with international competition and perceived injustice developed his famous competitive drive and skepticism toward bureaucracy. More significant than the competition itself was how Patton incorporated pentathlon principles into his military leadership. According to Colonel Paul Harkins, who served closely with Patton, the general explicitly modeled his command philosophy on pentathlon values: versatility across diverse conditions, balanced excellence across multiple disciplines, and the mental fortitude to transition rapidly between different combat environments. This pentathlete approach to warfare distinguished him from more specialized commanders of his era. The Olympic experience also exposed Patton to international military figures who would later become significant in World War II. During the Games, he developed relationships with several European officers, including members of the German military delegation. These connections provided Patton with unique insights into European military thinking that proved valuable during later conflicts. His personal diaries record detailed observations of German training methods observed during this period. Perhaps most importantly, the Olympics reinforced Patton's belief in the classical warrior ethos where mind and body function as an integrated whole. This holistic approach to combat proficiency contradicted the increasingly technical, specialized nature of 20th-century warfare. Patton wrote in his journal, "The modern soldier who neglects physical excellence while pursuing technical mastery will ultimately fail in both." This philosophy manifested in his famous insistence that officers in his command maintain exceptional physical condition regardless of their technical role. One of the least understood aspects of Patton's military success was his creation of an unconventional intelligence network that operated largely outside formal channels. Unlike most commanders who relied primarily on official intelligence departments, Patton cultivated a diverse array of personal informants throughout the European theater, creating what intelligence historian Timothy Naftali termed a parallel intelligence apparatus answerable only to Patton himself. This network began with Patton's recruitment of multilingual soldiers, particularly those with European backgrounds, whom he personally interviewed and assigned to specialized reconnaissance units. Captain John Heimlich, who served in one such unit, later revealed that these teams operated with extraordinary autonomy, often in civilian clothes, gathering information through direct contact with local populations in ways that conventional military intelligence units could not. Patton supplemented these teams with an unusual assortment of auxiliary informants, including journalists, displaced academics, and even former enemy officers willing to cooperate. According to recently declassified documents, Patton maintained regular communication with several German aristocrats opposed to Hitler, who provided valuable insights into German military thinking throughout the campaign in Western Europe. Perhaps most controversially, Patton established direct relationships with resistance movements across occupied territories, sometimes circumventing official Allied liaison channels. French resistance leader Jacques Renard documented in his memoirs how Patton's representatives would make direct contact to request specific intelligence, offering supplies and protection in exchange. These connections provided timely, ground-level information that often contradicted official intelligence assessments. The effectiveness of this personal intelligence network became evident during the Battle of the Bulge. While official intelligence failed to anticipate the German offensive, Patton's units detected unusual movements days before the attack. Though his warnings went unheeded at higher command levels, this early information allowed Patton to mentally prepare for the rapid pivot that would make his counterattack possible. After the war, General Oscar Koch, Patton's chief intelligence officer, acknowledged that managing this unofficial network required delicate balance. "The general expected me to harmonize his personal intelligence channels with official sources without interfering with either." This unorthodox approach to intelligence gathering reflects Patton's broader willingness to bypass institutional constraints when they limited operational effectiveness. The relationship between Patton and Eisenhower represents one of the most complex professional partnerships in military history. Beginning as a mentor-protege relationship in the 1920s, it evolved through phases of friendship, rivalry, and mutual dependency that fundamentally shaped Allied strategy in Europe. Their connection originated in 1919 when Major Eisenhower, 7 years Patton's junior, joined the Tank Corps where Patton was already a recognized expert. According to Eisenhower's memoirs, he initially viewed Patton as the most knowledgeable tank officer in the Army, while Patton recognized Eisenhower's exceptional organizational mind. This complementary skill set formed the basis of a productive collaboration developing armored warfare doctrine between the wars. Few accounts acknowledge the intellectual dimension of their relationship. Recently analyzed correspondence reveals that throughout the 1930s, they engaged in a robust exchange of professional articles, books, and critiques that helped both officers develop their strategic thinking. Patton's letters show particular admiration for Eisenhower's systematic approach to military problems, noting in 1934, "Your organizational frameworks bring clarity to concepts I intuitively grasp but struggle to articulate." The transformation of their relationship during World War II was far more nuanced than typically portrayed. When Eisenhower was selected over Patton for supreme command, Patton's private journals reveal not simple jealousy but a complex mixture of pride in his former subordinate and frustration over strategic differences. "Ike deserves his position," Patton wrote in 1943, "though I fear his political instincts may overrule military necessity." This strategic tension, between Eisenhower's coalition-building, methodical approach and Patton's aggressive, opportunity-seizing philosophy, created productive friction within the Allied command. According to military historian Carlo D'Este, Eisenhower privately relied on Patton to advocate for aggressive options that Eisenhower himself could not propose without undermining his consensus-building role. This dynamic created a good cop/bad cop pattern that enhanced Eisenhower's negotiating position with other Allied commanders. The final phase of their relationship, following Patton's controversial slapping incidents, revealed Eisenhower's pragmatic leadership. Contrary to simplified accounts, declassified communications show Eisenhower neither abandoned Patton nor unequivocally supported him. Instead, he orchestrated a carefully calibrated response that protected Patton's future utility while satisfying political demands for accountability. This nuanced handling demonstrated Eisenhower's sophisticated understanding of Patton's irreplaceable capabilities despite his liabilities. Among the most overlooked influences on Patton's military thinking was his lifelong passion for archaeology and ancient military history. Far beyond casual interest, Patton conducted serious archaeological expeditions and research that directly informed his operational approach during World War II. Between 1932 and 1936, Patton financed and participated in 3 archaeological expeditions to Mexico focusing on ancient Mayan military fortifications. These expeditions, documented in his detailed field journals, examined how Mayan defenders utilized terrain to create defensive depth and channel attacking forces into predetermined killing zones. According to archaeologist Richard Matthews, who reviewed Patton's field notes, his archaeological observations were remarkably sophisticated for a non-specialist, focusing specifically on military applications of topography. This archaeological experience directly influenced Patton's tactical decisions. When confronting German defenses in Sicily, Patton explicitly referenced his Mexican archaeological studies in operational planning. Colonel Chester Hansen recorded Patton telling his staff, "The Germans have established layered defenses exactly as the Mayans did at Uxmal. We'll bypass them using the same mountain paths that proved fatal to Mayan defenders." This archaeological knowledge provided Patton with alternative approaches not evident in standard military analysis. Patton's historical obsession extended to personal collection of military artifacts. His extensive collection of historical weapons, including Greek hoplite equipment and medieval arms, wasn't merely decorative. He systematically studied their design evolution to understand the relationship between technology and tactics. According to his aide Captain Paul Harkins, Patton would often handle these ancient weapons while dictating battle orders, drawing explicit connections between historical precedents and current operations. Perhaps most significantly, Patton approached battlefield terrain through an archaeological lens. Staff officers reported that during reconnaissance, Patton would frequently identify ancient battle sites and draw lessons from historical engagements fought over the same ground. Before the advance into the Saar region, Patton spent hours studying how Roman legions had navigated the same terrain, instructing his engineers to look for remnants of Roman roads that might provide firm ground for tanks. This historical archaeological approach gave Patton unique insights into the psychological dimensions of warfare. From studying ancient conflicts, he developed his theory of terrain memory, the idea that certain landscapes naturally channel military movements in predictable patterns regardless of technology. "Men have fought here before and will fight here again," he wrote after surveying the Kasserine Pass. "The land itself dictates the battle." This perspective allowed him to anticipate enemy movements based on historical patterns rather than just current intelligence. Patton's relationship with the press represented one of history's earliest and most sophisticated examples of a military leader consciously crafting a public persona to achieve strategic objectives. Far from the impulsive, unfiltered character portrayed in films, Patton approached media interactions with calculated precision. As early as World War I, Patton demonstrated remarkable media awareness. When commanding the Tank Corps, he arranged for photographers to document his tanks from specific angles that maximized their menacing appearance. His personal papers include sketches indicating optimal camera positions and lighting to create what he termed maximum psychological impact. This early understanding of visual propaganda predated formal military public relations doctrine by decades. Contrary to popular perception, Patton's famous profanity and theatrical speeches were carefully calibrated performances rather than spontaneous outbursts. War correspondent Charles Codman, who observed Patton in private and public settings, noted, "The general modulated his language precisely to his audience. The flamboyance emerged for troops and press, while staff meetings featured technical precision and nuanced historical references." This linguistic code switching reveals a sophisticated understanding of different rhetorical needs for different audiences. Patton maintained extensive press clippings and regularly analyzed media coverage of himself and other generals. His aide Lieutenant Colonel Charles Odom recalled that Patton devoted 30 minutes each morning to reviewing press reports, annotating them with observations about effective messaging. These annotations show Patton studying which elements of his public persona resonated with different audiences and adjusting accordingly. The famous slapping incidents that nearly ended Patton's career paradoxically demonstrated his media sophistication. While the incidents themselves reflected genuine frustration, Patton's response revealed media awareness. He immediately recognized the narrative damage and orchestrated a careful rehabilitation campaign, using personal visits to hospitals and targeted interviews to rebuild his image. Private correspondence shows Patton discussing specific media objectives during this period, demonstrating that even in crisis, he approached public perception strategically. Perhaps most tellingly, Patton explicitly discussed the strategic value of his media persona. In a 1944 letter to his wife, he wrote, "The Germans have assigned additional forces specifically to counter me because of my reputation. This phantom army I command through newspaper headlines ties down German divisions as effectively as actual troops." This conscious weaponization of his public image represented psychological warfare of the highest order. Patton's media awareness extended to the emerging medium of film. Recently discovered correspondence reveals that Patton consulted with Hollywood directors about camera-ready uniform modifications and effective staging of press conferences. These consultations occurred years before Patton the film, suggesting the general himself was helping craft the very mythology that would outlive him. The relationship between George S. Patton and the media represents not a simple exploitation of a colorful personality by the press, but a sophisticated, mutual utilization. Patton provided compelling copy while strategically building a persona that served military objectives through psychological impact on both Allied troops and enemy forces. Subscribe now, become a member, turn on notifications, share this video with your friends, and leave a comment so we can compare our knowledge and sources. Thank you for following our channel. Until our next strategic journey, here at Warriors of the World.